General Vexera stood at the command center of her flagship, the Stellar Sentinel, her iridescent scales reflecting the soft blue glow of the holographic displays. The border patrol route had become routine over her 15 cycles of service, but something felt different today. A subtle disturbance rippled through the collective consciousness, like a stone dropped in still water. "General, we're detecting an encrypted transmission from the council chamber," her second-in-command, Lieutenant Cax, reported. His neural tendrils twitched, a sign of anxiety that the collective consciousness couldn't quite mask. Vexera's four-fingered hand hovered over the communication panel. By protocol, she should forward it to Central Command without viewing it. But that ripple in the collective grew stronger, carrying with it an undertone of fear that didn't match the Empire's current state of prosperity. "Route it through my private terminal," she ordered, her inner eyelids narrowing. The decision went against every regulation, every ingrained behavior of their hive mind society. But her centuries of military service had taught her to trust these instincts. The holographic display materialized, showing footage from the council chamber. Grand Counselor Mexthor stood before the inner circle, his scales dulled with age, but his neural crown pulsing with power. "The sacrifice of Colony Series 47 through 52 is regrettable but necessary." His voice resonated through the recording. "The threat must remain real. Without it, our control weakens." Vexera's heart chambers contracted painfully. Colony Series 51. That was where her sister had been stationed with her entire brood. The collection of memories they shared through the hive mind flashed through her mind. The hatching of her sister's first clutch, the pride when they joined the collective, the promised safety of the outer colonies. "Lieutenant, access the deployment records for the defense fleet," she commanded, her voice steady despite the growing horror. The data confirmed her fears. The fleet movements, the resource allocations, the refugee protocols. They weren't defending against an external threat. They were systematically abandoning their own colonies. A message flashed across her screen. Colony Series 51. Evacuation status. Denied. Vexera's neural tendrils coiled tightly against her skull. Every fiber of her being resonated with the collective consciousness, urging compliance, acceptance, trust in the Council's wisdom. But for the first time in her life, she pushed back against that mental pressure. "Plot a course to Colony Series 51, she ordered. "Maximum speed." Lieutenant Cax's scales paled. "General, we don't have authorization." "The authorization comes from me." She straightened to her full height, her ceremonial armor glinting under the starlight. "Either stand with me or relieve yourself of duty." The bridge crew exchanged glances, their neural tendrils intertwining as they shared thoughts. Then, one by one, they turned to their stations. The Stellar Sentinel's engines hummed to life, turning away from its patrol route. They made it halfway to the colony when the first wave hit. A psychic blast tore through the collective consciousness, carrying images of betrayal, of Vexera conspiring with enemy forces, of planned sabotage. She staggered, gripping her command rail as false memories flooded the hive mind. "General," Lieutenant Cax screamed. On the tactical display, the entire 7th Fleet had emerged from hyperspace, weapons charged. "They're not just trying to stop us," Vexera realized, watching her crew writhe as the Council rewrote their memories. "They're erasing us." The first salvos struck the Stellar Sentinel's shields. Through the neural network, she felt her crew's loyalty crumbling, replaced by artificially induced hatred. Even Cax turned to her with eyes full of rage, drawing his weapon. In that moment, as her life's work crumbled around her, Vexera made a choice that would change the course of 2 civilizations. She initiated the experimental jump drive, plotting coordinates for the one place the Council's influence couldn't reach, a small blue planet on the edge of known space. The last thing she saw before consciousness faded was her sister's colony growing smaller in the distance, and the weight of billions of minds turned against her, pressing down like a cold, dark tide. Sarah Chen wiped the condensation from her cabin window, tracking the brilliant streak of light cutting across the pre-dawn sky. After 8 years of Special Forces operations, she'd learned to distinguish between natural phenomena and something more concerning. This was definitely the latter. The object's trajectory changed suddenly, ruling out a meteor. Its erratic descent path brought it closer to her location in the Cascade Mountains, the sound barrier cracking like artillery fire as it passed overhead. Just another quiet morning in retirement, she muttered, already lacing up her boots. Her go-bag was by the door. Some habits died hard. The impact came seconds later, powerful enough to rattle her cabin's foundation. Sarah moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, her boots crunching through fresh snow. The crash site was easy to spot, a deep trench carved through the ancient pines, ending in a smoking crater. The air carried an odd scent, like ozone and copper. The vessel wasn't military, at least not any design she recognized. Its sleek hull shimmered with an iridescent coating that seemed to ripple even while stationary. Part of her knew she should call this in. Her former handler would definitely want to know about unauthorized aircraft in restricted airspace. A pained sound, somewhere between a hiss and a whimper, made the decision for her. "Hello." Sarah approached cautiously, sidearm ready but not raised. "I'm here to help." The ship's hull split along invisible seams, revealing a cockpit unlike anything she'd seen. The pilot sprawled across the controls, clearly injured. Sarah's breath caught as the figure raised its head. Definitely not human. Iridescent scales covered its humanoid form, and neural tendrils hung limply around its skull like elaborate braids. The alien's eyes met hers, four-fingered hand pressing against a wound in its side that leaked silvery fluid. "Please," it spoke in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move. "They're coming." Sarah's combat instincts kicked in as multiple sonic booms echoed overhead. "Can you walk?" The alien tried to stand but stumbled. Sarah caught it, surprised by how light it was despite being nearly 7 feet tall. "I am. Vexera." The telepathic voice came weaker now. "General of the former 7th Fleet." "Save your strength." Sarah helped her from the wreckage. "I'm Sarah. And right now, we need to move." They'd barely made it 20 yards when the first black helicopters appeared over the ridgeline. Not standard military. These were unmarked, running dark. Sarah recognized the formation from her special ops days. Whoever they weren't here to help. "The tree line," she commanded, guiding them toward denser cover. Vexera moved remarkably well for someone injured, adapting quickly to Sarah's tactical positioning. The neural tendrils twitched with each helicopter pass, as if sensing something. "They're scanning," Vexera confirmed. "My species, highly telepathic. But these minds, they're close to me." Sarah led them through a narrow ravine, using the running water to mask their heat signatures. "Your people do this to you?" she asked, noting the battle damage on Vexera's ornate armor. "I discovered something they didn't want known." Vexera stumbled again, the silver blood now flowing freely. "Billions of minds turned against me. Had to flee. Somewhere they couldn't reach." The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. "That's why you came to Earth. We're immune to your telepathy." A weak laugh echoed in her mind. "Your species' greatest weakness might be my only hope." They reached Sarah's cabin just as the first search teams hit the ground. She helped Vexera inside, already planning escape routes and calculating supplies. The alien general watched with obvious fascination as Sarah moved efficiently around the space, gathering medical supplies and covering their tracks. "Why help me?" Vexera asked as Sarah began treating the wound. "Your protocols surely demand reporting this." Sarah thought of her own last mission, of orders that didn't add up, of choices between duty and doing what's right. "Let's just say I understand choosing conscience over orders." She secured the bandage. "Rest now. Something tells me we're both going to need our strength for what comes next." Outside, the helicopters continued their search pattern, but Sarah knew these mountains better than any federal agent. She'd keep her unexpected guest safe, not because of protocols or orders, but because sometimes Trust was more important than rules. 3 days into hiding, Vexera still couldn't comprehend the chaos of human interaction. She watched from the cabin's window seat as Sarah argued fiercely with her contact over a secured line, their voices rising with each exchange. "I don't care about your protocols, Marcus." Sarah paced the room. "You know me. If I'm harboring an alien refugee instead of calling it in, there's a damn good reason." The neural tendrils along Vexera's skull twitched involuntarily, trying to sense the collective consciousness that should accompany such conflict. But there was nothing, just the strange, isolated quiet of Earth's mental landscape. "Fine." Sarah slammed the phone down. "Trust goes both ways anyway." Vexera shifted uncomfortably. "In my society, such discord would be corrected. The collective would impose harmony." Sarah's laugh surprised her. "Harmony isn't real if it's forced. Sometimes the best teams I served with fought like cats and dogs during planning, but moved like one unit in the field." Before Vexera could process this contradiction, Sarah's security system chimed. Multiple vehicles approaching. Speaking of discord, Sarah moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing go-bags and weapons. "Your wound healed enough to run." Vexera touched the already scaring injury. "Yes, but..." She stopped as Sarah tossed her a human jacket and hat. "Cover your tendrils. We're taking the back route." They slipped out just as the first black SUVs pulled up. Sarah led them through a hidden trail, her movements precise despite the pre-dawn darkness. Vexera found herself admiring the human's adaptation to sensory limitations. A bullet splintered bark near Vexera's head. Contact. Sarah pulled her down behind a fallen tree. 4 operators, Northeast Ridge. "We should surrender," Vexera suggested, military logic taking over. "They have superior position and numbers." Sarah checked her ammunition with a grin. "That's very Salaxian thinking. Watch and learn why humans are dangerous." What followed defied every tactical principle Vexera knew. Sarah fired 3 shots, not at the operators, but at a dead tree on the slope above them. The massive trunk rolled, forcing their pursuers to scatter. In the confusion, Sarah led them down a creek bed, using the water to mask their thermal signatures. That was, Vexera searched for the word, improvised. Humans call it thinking outside the box. Sarah kept moving, her breath steady. "Your people rely on collective planning. We survive on adaptation." They crossed the creek, putting more distance between them and their pursuers. Vexera noticed Sarah checking landmarks she couldn't see, following some pattern in the chaos of Earth's wilderness. "How do you coordinate without telepathic connection?" Vexera asked as they climbed a steep ridge. "How do you trust each other's decisions?" Sarah helped her over a difficult section. "We learn to read body language, tone of voice, subtle cues. Sometimes trust isn't about knowing exactly what someone will do. It's about believing in their judgment." A helicopter spotlight swept the canopy ahead. Sarah immediately changed direction, leading them into a narrow cave. The sound of pursuit grew distant. "Your species confounds me," Vexera admitted in the darkness. "You argue, you defy logic, you act without collective consensus. Yet somehow, we get results." Sarah's smile was audible in her voice. "Humanity's greatest strength is that we're all different. Every person thinks uniquely, sees problems differently. In your society, 1,000,000 minds might come up with the same solution. Here, you get 1,000,000 possible answers." The cave opened into a small valley, where a weathered cabin stood among the pines. Sarah's friend Marcus waited on the porch, weapon lowered but ready. "You better be right about this, Chen," he called out. Then, seeing Vexera's alien features in the moonlight, he simply nodded. "Hell of a story, I bet." "The best ones usually are," Sarah responded, and the 2 humans shared a laugh that contained volumes of unspoken trust. Vexera felt something shift in her understanding. Perhaps her species' betrayal had led her to something remarkable. A world where strength came not from unity of thought, but from the beautiful unpredictability of individual minds. Marcus's cabin turned out to be more than a simple safe house. The basement contained a sophisticated command center, screens displaying classified satellite feeds and communication intercepts. "Welcome to Shadow Watch," he said, pulling up files on multiple monitors. "After the first alien arrived 6 months ago, some of us started connecting dots." Sarah leaned over his shoulder, scanning the data. "How many?" 17 confirmed refugees, all with stories similar to yours, General." Marcus brought up thermal imaging of crash sites across the globe. Different species, different governments, same pattern. They discovered something their leaders wanted hidden. Vexera's neural tendrils coiled tightly as images of the other refugees appeared. Impossible. The Cathera Collective, the Dromeni Empire, these are sworn enemies of each other. Were they? Sarah asked softly. Or was that just what your leaders wanted you to believe? Marcus typed rapidly, bringing up transcripts of debriefings. Each refugee reported discovering that their civilization's great enemy was largely fabricated, maintained through controlled information, staged attacks, and in your case, telepathic manipulation. The Council. Vexera's voice trembled in their minds. They didn't just lie about one threat. They helped other species leaders maintain their own deceptions. Sarah's tactical mind kicked in. A conspiracy across multiple civilizations. Keep everyone afraid. Keep them controlled. But why Earth? Marcus brought up a galactic map. Why do all roads lead here? Vexera studied the map, her military training finding the pattern. Because humans are the variable they couldn't control. No telepathy, no unified government to corrupt, no way to maintain the illusion. A proximity alarm flashed. Marcus quickly switched feeds. Speaking of illusions, we've got company. 3 ships just entered Earth's atmosphere. Silaxian design. Sarah checked her weapon. They traced us. No. Vexera's neural tendrils spread wide, sensing. Something's wrong. The telepathic signature. It's too strong. Too focused. Her eyes widened. It's a council strike team. Marcus's screens flickered with interference. They're broadcasting something. Every refugee in our network is reporting massive telepathic pressure. Vexera staggered, gripping the console. They're trying to rewrite our memories from orbit, make us forget what we discovered. Her voice grew strained. But they can't. Not completely. Not here. Because of us, Sarah realized. Human minds are like static in their signal. More than static, Marcus grinned. We're black holes in their telepathic network. They can't see through us, can't predict us. Vexera straightened, fighting the mental assault. The Council fears that most of all, if their own people spend too much time around humans, they might learn to think independently. Then let's use that fear. Sarah's expression turned calculating. Marcus, can you get me everything on the other refugees? Their discoveries, their evidence. He nodded. Already compiled. But the Council's ships will detect any large-scale transmission. They're watching for alien technology and frequencies, Sarah smiled. But what about good old-fashioned human internet, scattered across social media, message boards, gaming channels, hidden in plain sight? Marcus caught on. They're looking for a coordinated information dump. While we go viral, Sarah finished. 1,000 separate posts, looking like conspiracy theories and gaming lore, until someone starts connecting the dots. Vexera watched in fascination as the humans began working. Sarah coordinated with other safe houses, breaking down complex alien data into digestible pieces. Marcus crafted distribution networks that looked random but formed patterns the Council's algorithms would miss. My people would need consensus from 1,000 committees to attempt something this chaotic, Vexera observed. That's exactly why it'll work. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. Sometimes the best defense against a coordinated attack is complete unpredictability. Above them, the Silaxian ships maintained their orbital position, their telepathic assault continuing. But they couldn't stop what they couldn't understand. The chaotic, beautiful way human minds could take fragments of truth and assemble them into revelation. The revolution wouldn't begin with a bang, but with 1,000 whispers spreading across human networks like stars appearing in the night sky. The abandoned subway tunnel beneath Montreal had been transformed into something extraordinary. Salvaged alien technology merged with human ingenuity, creating a command center unlike anything in known space. Vexera watched as Dr. Elena Santos, a former CER and physicist, calibrated the telepathic dampening field. The frequency modulation is based on human brain waves, Elena explained, adjusting holographic controls with practiced ease. Your council can't filter it out without blocking their own telepathic network. Sarah emerged from a strategy session, followed by a diverse group of human military advisors and alien refugees. We've got movement. 3 more safe houses went dark in the last hour. The council's getting better at tracking us, Marcus added, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. They're learning to look for the gaps in their telepathic web. Vexera's neural tendrils twitched with anxiety. We should relocate. Standard protocol would be exactly what they expect, interrupted Commander Liu, a former Chinese Special Forces operator. He spread a digital map across the main table. So we do the opposite. We let them find this base. Intentionally. Vexera's scales shifted color with concern. Sarah's eyes lit up with understanding. Because this isn't just a base, it's a demonstration. The planning session that followed demonstrated everything that made humans terrifying opponents. They argued, proposed seemingly impossible ideas, combined tactics that should never work together. Yet somehow, the chaos coalesced into brilliance. The Council's forces are perfectly coordinated, Sarah explained to the gathered refugees. But perfect coordination means predictable patterns. We'll use that against them. A warning klaxon cut through the air. Marcus's screens lit up with incoming data. Multiple Council ships entering atmosphere. Ground forces deploying in standard search grid pattern. Right on schedule. Sarah nodded to Elena. Start the sequence. The physicist activated the dampening field, but with a modification. Instead of blocking telepathic signals completely, it created interference patterns, random patches of clarity and static. They'll think their equipment is malfunctioning, Vexera realized. Standard protocol would be to switch to backup systems, then tertiary. Keeping them busy while we show them what they're really up against. Sarah finished. The Council forces arrived with typical precision, their formations perfect, their movements synchronized. They never stood a chance. The first squad entered through the south tunnel, walking into a holographic maze that rearranged itself using random number generators. The second team encountered sonic disruptors tuned to frequencies that interfered with their neural implants. The third found themselves engaged by shadows, heat signatures, and motion sensors triggering automated responses that made it impossible to determine the defenders' true numbers. This is impossible, a captured Council operative sputtered after his team's defeat. There's no coherent strategy, no unified defense plan. How can you coordinate without consensus? That's the point, Sarah told him. As human and alien defenders emerge from their positions, we're not coordinating. Every person in this base is working from their own plan, adapting moment by moment. You can't predict what we'll do because we don't know ourselves until we do it. Vexera watched the operative's neural tendrils spasm as he tried to process this concept. She remembered feeling the same confusion when she first encountered human tactics. Now she understood. Their unpredictability wasn't a weakness, but their greatest weapon. Send the signal, Sarah commanded as the last Council forces retreated in disarray. Let everyone see what happened here. Marcus transmitted the battle footage through their underground network. Across Earth, other resistance cells would see that the Council's perfect coordination could be beaten by chaos and creativity. But more importantly, billions of minds across space would glimpse the truth through gaps in their telepathic networks. They would see that another way was possible, a way without absolute control, without enforced consensus. The Council fears humans because they can't control them. Vexera said quietly. "But they should fear them because humans prove control isn't necessary for victory." Sarah watched the transmissions go out, each carrying a spark of revolution. Sometimes the strongest unity comes from choosing to work together, not being forced to. The captured council ship hummed with power as Sarah strapped into the modified command chair. Around her, the hybrid crew, a mix of human special forces and alien refugees, made final preparations. Traditional Salaxian naval protocol would have required hours of synchronized consciousness alignment before such a mission. They had 5 minutes. "This is insane," Vexera said, but her neural tendrils rippled with something close to excitement. A direct infiltration of Salaxian space with a single ship. Crazy enough to work, Sarah checked the neural interface Alina had modified. "They'll be looking for a fleet, for coordinated attacks, not complete chaos." Vexera finished, mandibles clicking in what Sarah now recognized as amusement. Marcus's voice came through the comm. "Target coordinates locked. You'll emerge near Colony Series 51. Council presence is minimal. They think their telepathic control there is absolute." "Ready for jump," Elena reported from engineering, where she'd merged human computing systems with the ship's alien tech. "Time to see if our frequency masks hold up." Sarah took a deep breath. "Remember, we're not here to win battles. We're here to win minds. Execute jump." Space twisted around them as the ship tore through reality. They emerged in a stellar nursery, the burning gases providing cover as they approached the colony. Through the view screen, Sarah saw massive habitat rings spinning slowly, housing thousands of Salaxians under council control. "Defense grid is active," their tactical officer, a former Cathera rebel, reported. "But they're reading us as a routine patrol. The hybrid signatures are confusing their systems." Sarah nodded. "Begin transmission." They'd prepared the message carefully, evidence of the council's deception broken into fragments, hidden in routine data packets. Colonial administrators would find financial records showing the manufactured crisis, military logs revealing staged attacks, personal communications exposing the lies. "First packets away," Alina confirmed. "Dispersal pattern random but targeting key nodes. They won't be able to track the source." Vexera suddenly stiffened. "Council ships entering the system. 3. No, 5 vessels. Right on schedule." Sarah smiled. This was where human unpredictability would prove its worth. "Elena, initiate protocol chaos." The stolen ship systems began broadcasting on all frequencies, but not with any coherent message. Instead, they transmitted hundreds of contradictory commands, false sensor readings, and scrambled identification codes. The council ship's rigid protocols tried to process the conflicting data, their crews struggling to achieve consensus through their telepathic network. "They're splitting up," Vexera reported, almost laughing. "Their formations falling apart, as each ship tries to follow different protocols." Sarah keyed the tactical console. "Time for Phase 2. All hands, prepare for randomized maneuvers." What followed would be studied in military academies for generations. The stolen ship moved like no vessel in Salaxian history, its course plotting determined by quantum dice rolls and human intuition rather than strategic algorithms. Council gunners, trained to target based on predicted flight paths, couldn't land a single hit. "Colony's communications are lighting up," Alina called out. "The data's spreading faster than they can censor it. We've got civilian ships breaking formation, questioning orders." Through the view screen, Sarah watched the council's perfect formation dissolve into chaos as their own people began to doubt. Some ships stopped responding to commands. Others actively moved to protect the civilian vessels. "More council ships approaching," Vexera warned. "They'll overwhelm us with numbers soon." "They can try." Sarah's fingers danced across the neural interface. "But we've already won. Look." All around them, the telepathic network that had maintained the council's control was fragmenting. As each colonist discovered the truth, their doubt created static in the collective consciousness. The council's carefully maintained illusion began to crack. Time to disappear, Sarah ordered as the colony erupted into open rebellion. Let them deal with the consequences of freedom. As they jumped away, Sarah caught Vexera watching her with an unreadable expression. What? My people spent centuries perfecting coordination and control, the alien general said softly. In one day, human chaos accomplished more than all our precision ever did. Sometimes, Sarah replied, watching the colony fade into the distance, the most powerful weapon against control is simply showing people they have a choice. The Council's fortress ship hung in space like a crystalline spider, its vast neural networks pulsing with angry light. On the bridge of their stolen vessel, Sarah watched Vexera study the tactical display, the alien general's scales shifting through colors of memory and determination. That's where they tried to rewrite my mind, Vexera said quietly. The chamber of consensus, the heart of their control. Belena's voice came through the comm. Final diagnostics complete. The neural dampeners are as ready as they'll ever be, but we've never tested them against something this powerful. The Council has gathered their remaining loyalists. Marcus added from his station. 50 ships, all crewed by those still fully linked to the collective. Sarah checked her neural interface. The human-modified system felt strange but workable. How many ships in our fleet? 23, Vexera answered, crewed by those who've learned to think freely. Her neural tendrils twitched. The Council is broadcasting. The transmission came not in words, but in waves of pure thought. Sarah watched her alien crew members stiffen as the Council's message washed over them. They're offering amnesty, Vexera translated, her telepathic voice strained. If we surrender now, they'll correct our individual thoughts, make us part of the collective again. Counter-broadcast, Sarah ordered. Show them our response. Belena activated their special transmission. Not the focused beam of telepathic communication, but a scattered burst of individual thoughts, memories, and choices, humans and free-thinking aliens sharing their experiences of independence. The Council's fortress ship shuddered, its crystalline surface rippling as it processed this chaos of individual consciousness. Their loyalist fleet began to move, forming into perfect geometric patterns. They'll try to overwhelm us with synchronized attacks, Vexera warned. 50 ships thinking and moving as one. Sarah smiled. Exactly what we planned for. All ships, execute protocol freedom. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Council's fleet moved with perfect precision, each ship coordinating flawlessly through the collective consciousness. But Sarah's fleet operated on human principles, each ship acting independently, following not a central plan but their own instincts and judgment. The Council couldn't predict what they couldn't control. Their perfect formations shattered against the chaos of individual choice. Where they expected unified retreat, they found scattered advance. Where they predicted concentrated defense, they met dispersed attacks. We're approaching the fortress, Elena reported, but their telepathic defenses are still too strong. We can't break through. We don't break through. Sarah turned to Vexera. We go in. Together. They had practiced this, merging human unpredictability with Silaxian telepathic strength. Sarah felt Vexera's consciousness touch hers through the neural interface, not controlling but connecting. The Council's mental assault hit them like a tidal wave. Billions of synchronized minds tried to overwhelm them with unified thought. But where Vexera would once have faced this alone, now she had something new, a human mind beside her, chaotic and beautiful in its independence. You cannot resist unity, the Council's collective voice boomed in their minds. Individual thought is weakness, disorder, imperfection. Sarah pushed back with everything that made humans unique: doubt, creativity, choice. Through their connection, Vexera added her own memories of discovery, of learning that imperfection could be strength. Unity through choice, Vexera projected, her consciousness merging with Sarah's while remaining distinctly herself, not through control. Their combined consciousness became a weapon the Council had never faced, the precision of telepathic communication guided by the unpredictability of human thought. Throughout the fortress, minds began to wake. The Council's control fractured as their own people glimpsed the possibility of freedom. The collective is destabilizing. Alina's voice seemed distant. Their network is collapsing. The fortress ship's crystal surface cracked, its neural pathways overloading as billions of minds began to think for themselves. The Council's perfect unity dissolved into a chaos of individual awakening. In the space between thoughts, Sarah felt Vexera's consciousness pulse with joy. They had proved something extraordinary, that the strongest connections come not from enforced unity, but from minds choosing freely to work together. The revolution of the mind had begun. 6 months after the Council's fall, Vexera stood before the newly formed Interstellar Assembly on Earth. The converted United Nations chamber hummed with a peculiar energy, the mixture of verbal and telepathic communication that had become the new normal as species learned to balance collective and individual thought. The transition hasn't been easy, she addressed the gathered representatives, her neural tendrils moving freely without the weight of the Council's control. Many of our people still struggle with independence. Some fear the silence of their own thoughts. Sarah sat in the human section, watching her friend with pride. The neural interface at her temple, a modified version of Alina's design, allowed her to sense the ripple of emotions in the chamber. Fear, hope, determination, all painting a complex picture of societies in transformation. But we are learning, Vexera continued, learning that unity doesn't require uniformity. That strength can come from difference as much as similarity. Her gaze found Sarah's. Our human allies taught us that. In the months since the revolution, change had swept through former council space. The rigid hierarchies were dissolving, replaced by systems that balanced collective cooperation with individual choice. It wasn't perfect. Nothing born of free will ever was. But it was real. The latest reports from Colony Series 51 are encouraging. Marcus updated them later, during a private session. The new neural networks allow for voluntary sharing of thoughts and memories. People choose when and how to connect. And the children? Sarah asked, knowing this had been Vexera's greatest concern. Growing up with both abilities, Alina added, bringing up holographic data. They can link minds like their ancestors, but they're developing distinct personalities, individual interests. Some are even showing signs of human-like creativity. Vexera's scales shifted to colors of joy. My sister's youngest has started writing stories. Individual stories, not collective memories. She asked me yesterday why the sun had to be yellow. What did you tell her? Sarah smiled. I said that in her story, it could be any color she imagined. Vexera's telepathic voice carried wonder. She made it purple, with green spots. The meeting was interrupted by an alert from the quantum communications array. A new species had made contact, one that had been watching the revolution unfold. They too lived under the control of a collective consciousness, and they sought guidance in finding their own path to freedom. Here we go again, Sarah said, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. Vexera addressed the assembled team. The Council feared humanity because they couldn't control them. But they should have feared them because humans prove that true strength comes from choice. The choice to work together, to help others, to forge connections that go beyond mere unity of thought. As they prepared to welcome the newcomers, Sarah felt Vexera's consciousness brush against hers through the interface. Not the overwhelming force of the old collective, but a gentle sharing of friendship and trust. In that touch was everything they had fought for. The beauty of minds choosing to connect while remaining uniquely themselves. You know, Sarah said as they walked to the reception chamber, when you crashed in my backyard, I never imagined we'd end up restructuring galactic society. Vexera's mandibles clicked in amusement, and I never imagined that being betrayed by my species would lead me to discover a greater truth about connection itself. Around them, Earth continued its transformation into the center of a new kind of interstellar community. In parks and cafes, humans chatted with aliens both verbally and telepathically. Children of different species played together, sharing thoughts and words with equal ease. Artists merged telepathic imagery with human creativity to create entirely new forms of expression. It wasn't the perfect unity the Council had enforced, but something far more valuable, a harmony born of choice, strengthened by difference, and made beautiful by the very chaos they had once feared. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't technology or military might, but something far simpler: the courage to be uniquely oneself, and the wisdom to know that the strongest bonds are those we choose freely to forge.